Hello, and welcome to the Oikos Family Podcast, episode number 101. Well, it is April 2022, and I have an update for you. The update is all about out-of-stock items and audiobooks. So let me dive right in. On the 23rd of January 2022, we placed an order for, stock to come from the States. And what happened? It went missing. Could not be found anywhere. But never mind, it was finally found at the end of March, and now we're waiting for it to be sent to where it needs to be sent to so that it can then leave the States and get to us at some point or time. So you might wonder, how does this affect you, or what does it mean to you? A few things. You might be going to the Oikos online store and finding some items out of stock. In some instances, those items will be back in stock within a few days or a few weeks, and other times they won't be back in stock for a long time or for who knows when or if at all. However, you know the silver lining story. Well, let me share the silver lining with you, because behind the scenes, we have been making audiobooks here, wherever we can, because, audiobooks, you can't just make any audiobook. We have to get permissions and check that. We are able to, and if it's allowed, and all those things. So the titles in the books that we can produce into an audiobook for you, we do. Well, there's there's thousands and thousands of books, and we would love to just keep narrating audiobooks for you so that you could have them for yourselves and your family and your children. But some parents have expressed a bit of concern about these audiobooks, as they've noticed some titles going out of stock here in Oikos. And some of those titles are specific in that they are the novels that accompany the language lessons that the student is perhaps doing. So a parent has a bit of concern in saying, if the child just listens to the story, how is that helping with the whole reading process? Well, I'll answer that by firstly telling you that in the world of audiobooks, the people who know audiobooks, love audiobooks, produce audiobooks, listen to audiobooks, audiobook consumers and audiobook producers are strongly of the view that listening to a book is the same as reading a book. However, we know as parents that our children also need to actually learn to read the written word. So what I say about that is that there are digital versions of all of the titles of whatever we are narrating. We have checked, and we know that there's a digital version of that same title. So a parent can download the digital version, and then their child can listen to the audiobook and follow along with the digital version, which is really wonderful because it helps keep their focus. It helps, train the eyes to follow, and it removes struggles. So in actual fact, it can end up being the silver lining I was talking about, in that it can actually really enhance the experience of developing a love for literature. I tell you why. Because it gives wings to the imagination, as you can picture. I'm sure you can picture that if you're listening to an audiobook, you are imagining, we hope, or it's developing imagination in an individual of imagining the scene of what they're listening to. Secondly, it helps that struggling reader. Instead of them taking a book and really struggling through it, they can actually get the benefit of what that story contains. By listening to it, they're not missing out on the value of the story because they're struggling to read it, and they're so focused on reading and getting the words right and figuring out what that word actually is. That can actually remove the pleasure from what the story actually holds and what it has to give. So that's another bonus, another plus for being able to listen to the story rather than only have the actual physical book to read and nothing else. And then furthermore, a lot of, again, the audiobook world, as well as just our own personal experience, we have found that it actually is a very positive learning experience because of the fact that it's eliminating things such as the drifting focus or eye strain or fatigue. And worse, the worst of it all is leaving a student, a child, with a negative experience of literature. And lastly, we don't want, I'm sure no parent wants their child to be left with a negative experience of literature when there's opportunity to actually give them something other than that. And maybe they will have a negative experience if everything surrounding that topic or that subject, being literature and reading, is just such a difficulty for them. So if we can help them and make it not a difficulty, and at the same time actually not take away from the learning experience, but actually add to it and enhance it by these various different mediums. In fact, you know what? I think I must just share a personal testimony with you, because we had learning difficulties in our family. And we actually used audiobooks right from the days of tape aids for the blind. And this is how we used to use them. We would sit as a family and listen to the audiobook while we built a puzzle or did some sort of handcraft. So what we found came from that is the child that could just read that book, the actual story itself, without having to listen to it, that was fun. But they would read it on their own. And then we wouldn't, as a whole family, have the experience of that book together. But the child who was having tremendous difficulty with reading didn't have to feel that difficulty, because they could now get the story from sitting with the family and listening to the story, which I'm sure if you're listening to this podcast and you're a parent, you've experienced something similar of just how the whole family can grow together in unity and in relationships and in just actually developing this love for literature by enjoying listening to a book together. So in the end, what happened is, whether we had a tremendous learning struggle or not, either way, listening to these audiobooks actually just was an incredibly positive thing and a wonderful learning experience, a wonderful family experience. In fact, a very treasured memory, or memories, should I say. We've got all the puzzles to show for that, and all the puzzles that we built while listening to audiobooks. And now we have this huge privilege of being able to actually produce audiobooks ourselves. So, all that to say that actually I find the most wonderful silver lining in the fact that although we're out of stock and although it looks troubling, or maybe parents are getting concerned, we can actually remove that concern and say, you don't need to be troubled. You don't need to be concerned, because we're making the audiobooks in the meantime. The stock is on its way. It's coming in. It's not in. I shouldn't say it's in. It's on its way in. And if it doesn't ever arrive, well, that's okay too. And if we don't have the audiobook ready for you for your child's lesson for now, for this week or this month, because the next book that they need to read or know about for their language lessons, you can't get it, it's not available, you've looked everywhere, it's okay, because you can move on to the next lesson. And if your child never got that particular story and you had to miss some of those lessons pertaining to that particular story, it's okay. Do you know why? Because you as a parent can look at what lessons were being taught through that language lesson. For example, was the lesson about comprehension? So now you could take any story and read it aloud or listen to an audiobook and then pause it and talk to the children about it and find out if they're actually comprehending the meaning of the story, if they're actually following along, if they can follow the order of the story, what happened first, second, third, and so on. So those were the lessons that were perhaps being taught in the language lesson, which now you couldn't do in its entirety because of the fact that you didn't have the novel. So as you can see, you don't have to have that specific novel. You could choose another novel and adapt it. Now, I do understand that it's obviously a lot more practical and convenient and all those things if you could just have the novel and you could give it to your child and the child could read the book and do the lessons. That's just all straightforward, no complications. However, now you can't get the book. I'm using this example. Let's presume you can't get that particular book. What I'm hoping is that you won't panic. and that you will not have concern about it because there is another way. And the other way has a silver lining. And the other way could actually be developing and enhancing and improving and just all around making better what you didn't have to start with. And that was the book itself. So there you go. That is the update on the lack of stock in Oikos that we are experiencing and the silver lining that comes with that lack of stock, and that we are continuing to make audiobooks here. They do take very, very, very long. First off, you have to read the whole book aloud, as you can imagine. That's how you make an audiobook. But secondly, you don't just read it and it's done. You've got to sometimes repeat certain sentences or whole paragraphs or whole chapters in some instances because of things such as aeroplanes going over or the rain on the roof. There's lots of things that can interfere with the process of creating and narrating an audiobook. But anyway, once it's finally read, it then goes through the audio editing process, and that can take some time. And anyway, actually, let me just tell you this quickly. Talking about audio editing, Jamie, that's our son who also narrates books, he was talking to me this morning about some new software that is coming out. Not that is coming out, that has come out that will actually streamline the audio editing process. So he was explaining it all to me. And it's quite costly. So I said to him, well, we'll just have to wait on that one. And then I thought, when I go and do the podcast, you know what I should do? I should mention that we are hoping that Oikos families would consider joining the Oikos patron family, because we've got a Patreon page where we're hoping that some families out there that would like to support or help in some way or other, for us just to be able to have some funding coming in so we can purchase the tools required to keep being able to produce and provide the support and the help. And we can possibly make more audiobooks if we had the software to enable us just to speed up the process of it. Anyway, that is the hope. One day, maybe that will be possible. But right now, I just wanted to assure you that there is a silver lining and that we can be glad that sometimes when something isn't going how we want it to, the silver lining can actually show us that there's a lot more that we can have because of the thing that we thought we needed isn't available. And that is the whole story regarding novels and titles that are out of stock, because there really is a lot more that can be gained in the way of developing a passion and a love for literature when we add these different elements to it. And it's not just about buying the book and giving it to the student to read and them doing their lessons. There can be so much more. I can't tell you enough actually how every member in our family loves literature. Even those that had tremendous struggle with just being able to do what is so easy for somebody else, perhaps, and that is read. Read is just, we can read. It's not difficult. And another person, it can be an incredible challenge. So I don't know. We found the gift of audiobooks personally in our own personal testimony and our own personal family. And it has impacted us so much that is, I believe, why we feel so passionate and convicted and compelled to make audiobooks, because we know the gift that they are. So I hope you're going to find the gift. And I thank you for listening to this podcast. I hope that you are feeling at peace and that you are smiling, because we need to smile, don't we? We must smile in these times. April 2022, the whole world has all been through this pandemic together. And now there are unthinkable, incomprehensible things happening in our world. So that's why I hope that you will find audiobooks a gift, because I just think, let's listen to a book together. Let's listen to a story, build a puzzle. I just hope that you will be encouraged by this podcast to not despair when things are not going as we thought they would or should or we'd like them to, Because there's the silver lining. Let's go look for it. Thank you so much for listening, and be blessed and keep smiling. I'm still here. I haven't gone just yet because I realized after saying goodbye that I hadn't actually given any indication on how to become an Oikos patron. So I thought I'd better quickly let you know that it's quite simple. You would just go to the oikosfamily.coza website, which is its address, oikosfamily.co.za. And you will see on the very first page, it is just one page, you just scroll down, you will see a place where you can click on Become an Oikos Patron. And you will go there, you click on that, go there, and there you'll see the options on, it'll just guide you from there onwards as to what to do. I just hope it's straightforward and simple. If there are any difficulties that you might encounter along the way while trying to take those steps, you can just let us know and we can assist you. So once again, thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I'm very privileged and glad that I could sit and talk to you today. And I hope you have a wonderful time listening to audiobooks as a family. Bye for now.